Ladies and gentlemen, let's begin into Techland video. Let's discuss Techland's recent comments, shall we? They're causing a bit of a stir on the internet, as comments sometimes do. This time it's for Dying Light 2. They've hinted that the title, which is not exactly far along in development, but we'll get to that in just a second, may actually be too ambitious for the current generation consoles. That would be the PlayStation 4 and the Xbox One, not, the Xbox 360 and PS3. They were speaking in an interview, and they said, of course, we're not really talking about Dying Light 2 just yet, but the reason for that is that we might be too early. We have lots of ambitious ideas, so we first need to check if these ideas are even doable with the tech the current generation's consoles provide. We also need to check if the concepts are really as good as we think they are, so we need to prototype things, so there's nothing to talk about just yet. And on the other hand, there is a lot of things going on inside our studio where we can test, prototype and experiment with stuff. But I think that right now we have a very clear idea of where we can go with the IP and with the universe of Dying Light, so you can expect good things from us. Now, just to be clear, out of quote, Dying Light actually sold fairly well. It sold around 5 million units on the PlayStation 4, Xbox One and the PC, which is pretty damn respectable, at least in my opinion. Also, as a bit of history, late last year, it was actually confirmed that Techland were going to cancel Dying Light on the Xbox 360 and the PlayStation 3, and the reason they cited for this is a pretty simple one. They just didn't feel like the current generation, well, then current generation systems actually had enough horsepower to be able to run the games. They just didn't think that it was worth compromising the vision they had for the game, and so they just kind of gave in development. Or should I say gave in and stopped development. Now, before everyone jumps up and down on this and gets really upset with the studio, it is worth checking the date on your calendar and then realising when the consoles were released, and then kind of making a few assumptions, because let's face it, by the time this game actually is finished, because they're not even done with the prototyping yet, it's not even like they've got the world, the assets, the textures, or hell, they've not even figured out what gameplay elements or the stories are going to be yet. So by the time they've done all of this, it could be a 2 or 3 year process minimum. Obviously, it does depend on whether they reuse, let's say, the same engine that they are using currently, but from the sound of it, sounds like they're at least going to upgrade their current technology. As Techland typically do work on their own engine. It's known as the Chrome engine. This is actually the 6th installment of it, and it's actually shared with one other title, which is known as Hellraid. But rendering for this, they've upgraded it and updated it throughout the years, and obviously back in the day it was full built-in DirectX 10. They improved things such as particle systems, and it's got very robust physics and all of that stuff. So technically speaking, the studio is probably not going to release the game in it's not going to be on the store shelves until 2016, 2017. It could be 2018, 2019, obviously once again depending on what they feel that they need to do with the engine. So if you think about it in a very logical way, it might not be a bad thing, because by that point we might even be hearing rumours of the PlayStation 5 or the the Xbox, I don't know what the hell you're going to call the damn thing, the Xbox 3, the Xbox 4, the Xbox 2, the Xbox, I don't know, 1080, who the hell knows, whatever, the next generation Xbox. And possibly it could maybe come on Nintendo's system as well. Obviously it does depend what the NX, the final specifications are. I guess in the meantime, technically it could be released on the PC. Techland have released the previous game, Dying Light, on both Linux and Windows, so that's good. I'm all for studios which support Linux, not that I game on it specifically. I'm more of a Windows gamer, but I have to confess I would like a more robust Linux gaming system, or more developers rather, to invest in the Linux ecosystem. The problem, of course, is developers then have to optimize ports for different operating systems, and it can be a little much. Warner Brothers, to be fair, though I have been rather critical of them in terms of their policies for review, they are actually quite robust for their support of Linux ports, so that's kind of a good thing, and you can see a variety of their games actually do have Linux ports, and they're of course not the only ones, but I'm just pointing it out for your informational purposes. Regardless, if they do go ahead and make the game, more of an open world, and they improve the graphics and do all the other bits and pieces that we kind of expect of games of that time. I mean, for all we know, it's going to be a full VR experience, and obviously I'm just throwing that out there, but hopefully one of the things that currently games have problems with is physics. We still are fairly, I wouldn't say primitive in terms of physics, but they're nowhere near where you should be. There's still clipping issues where you'll have like an arm clip for a tree, or trees just don't behave how they should be. Just for the sake of argument, look at Crackdown 3. To be able to actually render Crackdown 3 with the fidelity and the destructible physics, you have to have an online game, because the Xbox One itself just can't handle it. It's, you know, several times what the Xbox One can handle. So, you know, the PlayStation 4 couldn't handle it either locally, so it has to farm out things to the cloud. My point being that even modern day PC systems, you know, unless you're running like a really high-end rig, just for the sake of argument, Xbox One is about 1.3 teraflops of computing power, if I can get the words out. You could have like a Crossfire Fury, which certainly does have the performance to do that, but it's going to take an awful lot of power, and that's just for physics. So currently physics is extremely expensive to render locally. There are improvements being made for that. We've got various improvements in terms of compute functionality and obviously HSA and all the other jazz, but it's still really expensive. So, you know, the next generation consoles hopefully will improve on that somewhat. Obviously, it's very unlikely that the next generation consoles, the PS5, are going to have, you know, 50 teraflops of computing power, but they're obviously going to be significantly more powerful than what we've got now, because obviously Microsoft or Sony will want you to upgrade, and for that purpose they do need to demonstrate, you know, a point for you to upgrade. So I'm not really surprised about this, to be honest. I don't necessarily feel it's the RAM, which it could be. You know, PCs now have hit the 16 gigabytes. It's not standard by any means, but, you know, 16 gigs, especially when you're starting to account for VRAM as well, because VRAM is quite high, although there are associated problems with PCs and higher operating system overheads. For example, Windows, you know, you've got the 2D acceleration and all of that stuff for Windows actually takes up quite a bit of memory in your graphics card. You've got the drivers and all of that stuff that takes up a lot of memory, so it can eat into a lot of RAM anyway. My point being, I've kind of rambled quite a bit. However, I'm not necessarily against them putting it back if it's for the good of the game. And as I said, you know, 3 years time, we don't know if the PlayStation 5 is actually going to be released. It's possible that it will be. I mean, the console would be, obviously I'm kind of rounding it up here, around 5 years old, the PS4/Xbox One. So we could start definitely hearing rumours about maybe 2018, 2017 of the next generation consoles, just like we did with the you know, when the PS3 was around, and we started hearing, you know, the PS4 is going to have X amount of RAM, or, you know, when we heard about PS4, the PS4 has X amount of RAM and this amount of teraflops, and, you know, it's able to make toast for you in the morning and all of that crap. But hopefully, you know, as long as it's for the good of the game, I don't mind them putting it back. As long as they release other cool games in the meanwhile, I'm all for it. Anyway, hopefully you've enjoyed the video. I'll see you soon. Take care. Bye for now.